It's Monday, February 29th, 2016, and welcome to episode 186 of Tech Talk for Teachers. I'm Tom Grissom.
And I'm Cindy Rich.
Welcome to Tech Talk for Teachers, the show about teaching and learning with technology, and happy leap year.
Yes, oh my gosh.
So we've got an extra day to get things done this year.
You know, use it wisely.
That's right. This time, I thought we'd take a little bit and come across a recent article. The name of this show is Campfires in Cyberspace, and I'll provide a link in the show notes to an article from David Thornburg, and I'd encourage you to go out there and read that article. It's a very good overview, but we'll just have kind of a bit of a philosophical discussion about teaching and learning and designing some learning experiences. And then, Cindy, we got a couple of themes, I guess, for our technology picks of the week this time.
We do. We're being creative and letting our, I guess, the right side of our brain, is that the right side?
The visual.
letting the creative juices flow and how that can help with the content, the instructional part.
Yep. So sit back, relax, and here we go. Up first today, I thought we would talk a little bit about some of the trends. Every time we do a podcast, I kind of look back over the last month and look at some of the trends, and a lot of that information I reflect back on comes from my Twitter stream. Mm-hmm. And one of the trends that I'm starting to see a lot of is with personalized learning, kind of learning spaces, learning environment, blended learning. We hear a variety of terms, and they're somewhat related, but they are unique terms. But before I get into that, and another reflection that I had since we did our last podcast, I think I owe the audience an apology from last time. One of the things, and this kind of leads into the conversation I want to have today, one of the things that we do as teachers whenever we design whatever it is, whatever instructional activity it is, or in this case, a podcast. Last time we did the stop motion Lego project, and I had a couple of examples out there where we were using OneNote. And then we I jumped over and I shared with you how to use PowerPoint as a photo album.
Right.
Well, that is a classic case since we're doing an audio podcast. In fact, you even made the comment whenever I was out there describing it, I was describing procedural language with, you click here, you go here, you click on this.
Right.
And you may have heard the term in the mind's eye. You know, we as teachers, whenever we're teaching something, we see it. I mean, I see it clearly in my eye. Whenever I say photo album in PowerPoint, I can envision the ribbon interface and go up there, click on insert, and there it says photo album. I can see that clear as day in my mind. Mm-hmm. Now, some people, we talk about audio, visual type learners, and, you may be a visual person. If you're a visual person, an audio podcast probably isn't the best choice for explaining something like that. And since I, go back and edit the podcast, it was interesting because I usually listen to our podcast, 2 or 3 times by the time I go through and edit and piece things together. But it was very obvious in doing that it makes an excellent example for the future. An excellent example of whenever we're trying to mix media and messages type things, that we want to provide the proper tools for whatever it is. So I felt a little bit guilty about that. And I went back and actually created 2 screencasts.
Very helpful.
So if you are a visual learner, and I provided those in the show notes last time, I'll also link them out in today's show notes. But if you are a visual learner and want to learn about how to make a very easy photo album in PowerPoint, check out the show note links. And then also we did that with the stop motion.
We did. That was fun.
The other thing, you threw a question out, and this is part of the give and take between learner and teacher or whatever, but you ask, I wonder if we could do less than 1 second for the timing of it.
Right.
And yes, you can.
Oh, so you can make it a speedy stop motion, so it's going to really flow. Mm-hmm.
And that podcast is about 4 minutes, and if you're into stop motion instead of this photo album thing, that's an alternative way to do it.
Very cool. It's neat projects. I mean, and it just opens up all kinds of doors in the classroom of ways to use that. Something different to let kids or let students demonstrate understanding.
Mm-hmm. Now, this time, one of the things that caught my attention, I saw a reference to something I had read many, many years ago, and I'll provide a link out there. And the name of today's show is going to be Campfires in Cyberspace. And where that name comes from is David Thornburg, back in 2007, had updated this article. It used to be a book called Campfires in Cyberspace. He basically does a think tank where he writes opinion pieces and just kind of takes a look at the way that we've developed technology over the years. And this actually goes back to the 1990s. I'll provide a link in the show notes, and it's only about a dozen pages, so it's a really quick read. And he basically outlines the different ways that we humans have learned over time. He starts out with the campfire. The campfire, wherever whenever, back in our primordial days, we'd gather around a campfire and listen to the elders tell stories. And so that was one method of transmitting knowledge, from one generation to the next. Mm-hmm. Then the second way is a watering hole.
Where they gathered. Where
we would gather along, go down to the water hole, get the water, and then we would learn from our peers, find out the latest news, maybe a little bit of gossip along the way, but definitely a more informal way. And then the third way was, in this metaphor that he was using to tell this story, Campfires in Cyberspace, was the cave. And in a cave, we would retreat ourselves back into a cave and isolate ourselves, maybe do some meditation, and truly get to know something by being alone by ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then the last one is life itself. And you've heard the term the school of hard knocks or whatever. We don't truly know something until we experience it and apply it. We may think that we know it, having been instructed or whatever, but until we apply it, that's when, if there are any gaps, they become very, very apparent.
Right.
At that point.
Yeah, and so that's a great example, because you're going from, all the different ways that we teach in our classrooms. We have the teacher-led, which would be the campfire, where you have the elders talking and everybody else listening.
Kind of the classroom experience. In fact, right. In this article, he uses the metaphor, those warm campfires have changed to the glow of projectors in classrooms.
Yep.
To modernize it,
right.
Because as we go through this technology evolution and we're incorporating more and more technology into this personalized learning experience or blended learning experience, mm-hmm. however you want to refer it, those are being incorporated.
Right. And then the watering hole would be more of the collaborative learning, mm-hmm. and interacting with others. And then
small group work.
Independent would be the cave, and then application, taking it out and doing it, and either doing it well or falling on your face, but realizing what you did wrong and then, adjusting.
Right, and providing those opportunities, as you said, we need to have a mixture of all four.
Right.
We have to have that mixture. That's one thing as I'm reflecting back on some of these conversations and themes that I see throughout my social network. We kind of get off on these kicks sometimes that, personalized learning, we need to do a little bit more individualized, mm-hmm. but yet we can't forget that group collaborative type. That's got to be built into the experience, because we're social creatures and that's the way that we learn.
And that's what makes teaching hard, because what works beautifully one day, the next day, if students aren't feeling it or aren't in the right mood, or the topic just doesn't fit, it doesn't work. And so we're constantly adjusting what we do and using bits and pieces of all of those, as it's just a fluid. I mean, it's constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to read, it'll just take me just a minute here, but I'd like to read one excerpt paragraph from this article. And like I said, I'll provide the link out in the notes. But this is a Creative Commons license, so I encourage you to read this. But this summary, and this is where David Thornburg is talking about life. So the paragraph reads, life, whether our insights are established through campfires, watering holes, caves, or more likely a combination of the three, we really don't know what we know until we have tried to apply it. The application of knowledge, what I will call life, is an essential component to the learning process. My guess is that, like me, you may have seen a demonstration of a task that made wonderful sense until you tried to do it yourself. At that point, you realized that there was something missing from your knowledge. Had you not attempted the task, you might never have known that you really didn't have the skill you thought you had. This is one of the reasons that there is much to be said for just-in-time instead of just-in-case learning. Much of our school curriculum seems devoted to us having to learn things just in case we will someday need to know them. Yet, when we learn something in anticipation of its immediate use, we not only reinforce our understanding, we increase the likelihood that what we have learned will not readily be forgotten. And I think that's just a really good summary of what we try to do as teachers. It also kind of explains the maker movement and things that we're trying to see, more and more with the hands-on application. Right. So it's just interesting seeing these themes occur over the decades. You just kind of see this pendulum swing forward and back from we need to know, teach to the test, or we do more of the maker movement, more of the free flow. And that's a struggle that we're constantly having in education.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think we're moving so much more to student-driven as opposed to teacher-driven instruction.
Right.
And that's constantly changing things, too, because our students are all unique.
And that's very, very true for personalized, because you have to have that student agency or that student choice component in there, as well as blended learning. How do we do that in our instructional environments to give? And, we all have tricks and things that we do.
Well, and the student choice, sometimes people make it harder than it needs to be. Student choice doesn't need to be completely open-ended. Student choice can be a choice of 3 things.
Options,
and so, it's controlled choice is what we always call it in class, and that because you're still directing them in a specific direction that you want them to go. And sometimes having a set number of things to choose from is a little less stressful as well, because otherwise it's so broad and wide open.
Right. But I'm sure there's educators out there that disagree, with us regarding that. There are educators that, kind of more the free range philosophy. It's just like, turn them loose and let them go wherever.
Yeah.
But anytime, as this says, in the statement that he says, what's he say here? It says, at that point, you realize there was something missing from your knowledge. Had you not attempted the task, you might never have known that you really didn't have the skill you thought you had. So that's that challenge in designing these, instructional activities or whatever. How do we provide the choice? And sometimes, and I do this many times, and it's hard to do as a teacher, but sometimes you need to let the students go out there, make the choices, and have them fail, and go down that and iterate and, improve, whatever. Oftentimes, and this is hard for me to do, but I've learned over the years that it's not that we're being lazy or whatever you want to call it as a teacher, but you have to let students fail sometimes.
Right.
Even though you can see it coming. And again, the school of hard knocks or whatever, sometimes it just takes that happening to yourself in order for you to internalize it. And whenever you retreat to the cave and reflect upon that, it's like, now I truly understand. I've internalized it.
And sometimes we have to stumble before we start really paying attention to what we're doing. If it's, you're just doing it and you don't really, but as soon as you have a little issue, then you really focus more. And so we have to let them stumble.
Right. So just kind of wrapping up here with some of the conversations and things. You're not involved in Twitter. I encourage you to do that, because I kind of treat Twitter as my watering hole because it's kind of a little bit more informal. Over time, I've developed this network of friends. And one big difference in this theme of this Campfires in cyberspace, as technologies evolved and as teachers and students, we take advantage of the technologies. We've never had an opportunity like this in our human history. We now have the internet. It's planetary in scope. So that watering hole used to be local. You'd go down 10 miles from your house or whatever. That's as far away as you would ever get. But now it's truly planetary, so there's nothing holding us back. And that's what's fun about building these personal learning networks, that you can go out there and selectively find people of common interest. And as importantly, people of different interest, because sometimes we get wrapped up in that echo chamber.
Right.
So we have to honor, the differences of opinion, and that too is a learned skill or a conscious effort to do. I see many times out there you start seeing the same things over and over, in your network, and then every now and then we'll see a thread or something go through. It's like, well, I disagree. I respectfully disagree with that. But you need to throw that out to get people thinking sometimes.
Right. And so it's a combination also of the people in your building and that you work with every day, as well as those distant people and that you've never met face to face, but you feel like you know them. Right.
So we live in amazing times. We can take advantage of these technology tools, whether that watering hole be just down the hall a couple of doors or across the planet.
That's right.
We have that capability. Our technology picks of the week this week have to do with graphic editors, photo editing. We've been doing some things with some visual type thinking, and one of the big things, another trend out there, is sketchnoting and drawing your notes. So one that I recently come across is a new app for Windows tablets called Plumbago. And I think of this as kind of a very simplified OneNote page. But what I really like about this is it has the radial menu, which they kind of took that away in OneNote. But there's a new radial menu that makes it very easy, kind of a little color wheel, and very simple interface. So this is a much simpler interface than OneNote, so you're limited with what you can do, but sometimes limitation's a good thing.
It is.
I'm using the digital pen, and you have the choice of either a pencil or a pen, and the ink is very smooth and flowing. The pencil, you kind of have that texture like a page, like colored pencil type look. Very easy to use. You can create different notebooks and things out there, but this is more meant for a quick little sketch note or just jotting down a thing or two, so that's a new one.
Well, and those are neat for like concept mapping and things like that.
Great for that, for webbing or what I call mind mapping type activities for just the freehand flow.
Very good. Well, mine's more of a I've seen a lot of coloring books now for adults, and so on my iPad I found a free coloring book app. Of course, you've got about 10 of them that you can do, and then they want you to buy additional ones. But
those in-app purchases.
Right. But it's just a neat little thing that, I like coloring for real. I like coloring actual print pictures and that. But this is just an app, and I was waiting for something one day and downloaded it. And it's had a lot of garden scenes and things like that. And you pick your colors and you fill it in. And but it's just one of those things that just kind of calms you down. And when you're thinking of a million different things, because we're all so busy right now, it's just sort of a focusing activity in that. And so as I looked, I couldn't believe all the apps that were out there. And if you go on Amazon or anything, there's just so many adult coloring books available. So apparently, somebody's onto something.
Yeah, I've been seeing those. It's like Zen and the Art of Coloring, try quiet your mind or whatever. Kind of that thing we were talking about earlier about going back into the cave, I guess. Just kind of some alone time. But also out there, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, because I'm still a firm believer, you mentioned, in real life or, going back to the analog world. We have color pencils, markers. We have 3-foot, 4-foot paper out here. And I always encourage particularly our elementary and middle school teachers here in the Instructional Technology Center to make some of those teacher-created materials and let the students, have that, physical experience with the hand and the mind type thing. So why this, the apps and the screen, you don't get all the dust and the marks and everything else on your clothes and on your hands and everything.
But you can still print them out and display them if you want. And actually, the course I teach is for secondary teachers, and we talk about that a lot, that it's how they like to learn, and they like to move and interact and don't want to just sit and listen to lecture. Right. And so same thing that, we need to be using those things with our secondary students as well, and giving them a chance to move their bodies, get the oxygen flowing a little bit, and then also to have a little bit of a creative release and some choices, even if it's just a matter of choosing colors from that color wheel. At least it's their choice.
That wraps it up for episode 186 of Tech Talk for Teachers. Show notes for this episode and archived episodes are available on the web at the EIU Instructional Technology Center website at eiu.edu/ITC. If you have a comment or suggestion, please send an email to techtalk@eiu.edu or leave a comment on the Tech Talk for Teachers blog. Until next time, I'm Tom Grissom.
And I'm Cindy Rich.
Keep on learning.